My name is Adam Klausner. I am a urologist at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, and it is my honor to present to you our abstract, The Overactive Bladder Biomechanical Spectrum, a method for pinpointing an individual based on dynamic elasticity and spontaneous rhythmic contractions during filling. We have no conflicts to disclose other than that this study was funded by the National Institutes of Health. Hypothesis, aims of the study. There is a pressing research need to develop an objective method to improve overactive bladder phenotyping. The goal of this study was to combine two of our recent advances, first in the development of an automated FFT analysis of Detrusor Overactivity, and second in the development of a comparative-fill urodynamics protocol to determine dynamic elasticity, together to create a novel overactive bladder spectrum to help improve overactive bladder phenotyping. Background, in terms of our first development, which is FFT Analysis, Fast Fourier Transform, or FFT signal analytics, were used to objectively quantify the amplitude and frequency of Detrusor Overactivity during urodynamics in an automated method. And what this developed was an FFT method to identify the maximum amplitude and frequency of phasic Detrusor Overactivity. Our next development was in the development of dynamic elasticity, and we used our comparative-fill urodynamics protocol to identify dynamic elasticity as the reduction in vesical pressure during a bladder fill due to strain softening with a return after active voiding. And you can see in the example in the top right panel that the pressure drops and then goes back up. And what we found was that in individuals with Detrusor overactivity, they had DE, whereas in individuals without Detrusor overactivity, they did not have DE, dynamic elasticity. Therefore, we wanted to combine these studies due to the hypothesis that there was a significant relationship between them. So, for this study, we recruited participants with and without overactive bladder for a comparative-fill urodynamic study. OAB was determined by the International Continence ICIQ OAB Urgency question 5A, which is a 0 to 4 scale, where OAB was determined if they scored greater than 3, and normal was determined, or non-OAB, if they had no lower urinary tract symptoms and scored less than or equal to 2. FFT and dynamic elasticity analysis was performed using our previously published techniques. The dynamic elasticity, again, defined as the Pves loss plus the Pves gain divided by the change in capacity, and FFT analysis, again, used to determine the maximum rhythmic amplitude of Pves. So what we did was then graphed both of these parameters on an x and y axis. So the x-axis was the dynamic elasticity index, and the y-axis was the FFT amplitude to create this overactive bladder spectrum. And for this study, we had 13 participants with overactive bladder and 15 without overactive bladder. And here are the results. The combined plots generate a widely distributed OAB spectrum, and the OAB positive individuals are found to be more widely distributed than the OAB negative individuals, as shown in panel C with the pink oval on the right. And the maximum rhythmic amplitude of greater than 1, if we use that as a set point, was able to determine that individuals with OAB were more likely to be above this horizontal set point. Interpretation of the results. Comparative-fill urodynamics was used to calculate both DE and FFT amplitude, and plotting both of these parameters was able to generate an overactive bladder spectrum. An individual's position on the spectrum can be directly pinpointed using this methodology, and OAB positive individuals appear to be much more widely distributed. So future directions, treatments can ultimately be evaluated based on OAB spectrum position rather than simply categorically as OAB positive or OAB negative. In conclusion, the generation of an OAB spectrum using bladder biomechanical properties of dynamic elasticity and maximum Pves rhythmic amplitude obtained from comparative-fill urodynamics may enable improved phenotyping of individuals with overactive bladder, and future research will be required to determine the clinical utility of this novel OAB spectrum. Again, this study was funded by the National Institutes of Health, and our references are as follows. Thank you very much for your time.